breeding cyberspace cadets. Sam Raimi is known for his inventiveness, composition and clever ways he conveys information to us in his films. He has a wonderful knack for taking ordinary people and putting them in fantastic situations. And he deceptively makes this look simple, he makes it look natural. Raimi is a mage with his mastery of the cinematic cliché. He doesn't overdo it. His formula is simple: take overused elements and uses them masterfully. Not as a lazy device like most other horror directors. A prime example of this is his deployment of the jump scare. Every jump scare, especially in Drag Me to Hell, is holy terror. A couple of the jumps in this film caught me completely off guard and I loved it. Also, he has a great usage of slapstick elements. Like a good comedy, the slapstick elements are repeated, but just enough. His debut feature-length film was a game-changing horror film, 1981's Evil Dead. His second film was the wonderfully fun Evil Dead 2, then he began to get into a film-making groove with Darkman, then Army of Darkness, The Gift, A Simple Plan. He also branched off into TV with Xena Warrior Princess, Hercules and Spartacus, and in film Raimi reached the peak of commercial success with Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. After that decade of hard work, Raimi returned to his first love, horror, this time rising to the challenge and making a PG-13 rated horror opus. Drag Me to Hell. This film is a sincere love letter to Raimi's influences, and he proves how he is a master of the genre. The story was written by Raimi and his brother Ivan, and it remained on the shelf for 10 years while making the Spider-Man trilogy before he picked it up and put it in production. Also, Raimi has a knack for surrounding himself with high-quality talent. Greg Nicotero's K&BFX, and then there's the fantastic cast: Alison Lohman, Justin Long, Lorna Raver as Sylvia Ganush, and Elite Prow as the medium Ram Jaws. Raimi's return to horror movies opens with what appears to be a migrant farm worker and his wife with their son wrapped in a blanket. They take him to what appears to be a bruja, Spanish term for witch or a medium, who lives in a huge mansion. They tell her that their boy can hear voices and see shadows of something coming after him. The bruja asks if he angered anyone, and the parents finally admit that he stole something from a gypsy, but the gypsies refused it when the parents tried to give it back to them. She tries an exorcism seance, and we watch with her as the boy gets swallowed into the ground, dragged into the flames of hell. When the film begins in earnest, we see our protagonist driving to work. She's taking audio diction lessons. While walking from the parking deck to her job, she briefly stops and lingers briefly at the confections in the window of a bakery, before abruptly turning away and going into her job at Wilshire Bank. She seems like a good person trying to help a Latino couple obtain a loan, but when they leave we see her longingly looking at an empty desk across the floor in a cubicle labeled assistant manager. She approaches her boss, where he tells her that she's in a competition with newbie Stu Rubin, played by Reggie Lee, who is a recent hire, in addition to being a smarmy suck-up, and very ambitious. He's not afraid to make the tough decisions. When she returns to her desk, there is an old lady with a scarved head waiting for her. Our heroine introduces herself as Christine Brown. The septuagenarian is Sylvia Ganush and is our antagonist. She hands Christine a folder of papers saying that the bank is repossessing her property and that she asks for another extension to delay the need for repayment of the back due mortgage and penalties. Christine approaches the boss and asks if there's anything to do. He points out that this would be the third extension and that this is a tough decision, implying that refusal would edge her closer to that assistant manager's job. She tells the old woman that it's not possible to extend the loan and that she is sorry. Mrs. Ganush starts to leave, and before she gets halfway to the entrance, she turns around and gets on her knees, stating that she is a proud woman and that she is begging that Christine provide her with an extension. She starts kissing her skirt. This causes Christine to freak out a little before she calls security to deal with her. They begin to escort her out before Christine calls out to her, apparently to apologize as her body language suggests, but Ganush breaks free and tries to attack Miss Brown. The guards grab Ganush and Christine is scared, but no worse for the wear. The boss asks Christine if she is okay. She nods yes. He then tells her she made the right call. Later, we see him compliment her and tell her that she's at the top of the list for the assistant manager job because of her dealing with Mrs. Ganush. So we have a protagonist that is flawed but very likable. An average, everyday, ordinary person. A trademark Raimi protagonist. At the end of the day, we find Christine walking through the parking deck to her car when she is startled at the sight of Mrs. Ganush's car parked across from Brown's car. Brown is nervous and the empty parking deck adds to the creepiness atmosphere of the scene. After getting in the car and sitting in the driver's seat, she notices a scarf that appears to be caught by a breeze. She follows it as it sails around the deck towards her car and disappears under the grille. Suddenly, It smashes on the windscreen, startling Christine, and she screams. Then the breeze continues, lifting the scarf to her right, and it slowly makes it down to the back of the car. As it winds around the back of the car, we notice Mrs. Ganush in the back seat. A fight ensues, hair pulling and hitting. The car gets put in gear and backs into another vehicle. All the while they are fighting, Brown hits the gypsy with a stapler. The fight escalates and Brown puts it in drive, buckles her belt, and crashes the front. Ganush flies into the front seat, her dentures are in the floorboard, and she attacks her and she starts scumming her lower jaw. Is a cringy scene, lots of cringe in her mouth. Hats off to Alison Lohman for embracing the cringe. The fight culminates where we think that Mrs. Ganush may strike a dangerous, possibly deadly blow. She tears a button off of Brown's coat sleeve. She casts a breath on the button and loudly whispers Lamia, and she gives the button back to her and says, "Now it will be you who comes to me for help." Then Christine appears to become faint, lightheaded dash. And when she awakens, Ganush is gone. After she deals with the police, Chris and her boyfriend Clay enter a medium's parlor because Christine wanted her fortune told. She secretly wonders if she should have enabled Mrs. Ganush by extending her loan. Her boyfriend Clay is a psych professor, a nerdy coin collector at the local university, and his practical academic mind is shut when it comes to the supernatural. It's all BS to him. They meet Ramjas, the medium, who agrees to read her fortune. He sees a terrifying demon's face and immediately panics and offers to pay the money back. Christine wonders what the heck. Ramjas asks her if she had messed with any Ouija boards or blasphemed the dead while at a graveyard because a dark spirit has been visited upon her. He tells her that there is no recourse. The curse of the Lamia. For 3 days the spirit torments the victim with abuse, visions and hallucinations before dragging the victim into the depths of hell. That night after the first visit from the demon, she is visited again in her sleep.
What's the matter?
I couldn't wake up.
It's okay. Okay. Come here. It's just a dream.
For 3 days the spirit torments the victim with abuse, visions and hallucinations before dragging the victim into the depths of hell. That night after the first visit from the demon, she is visited again in her sleep. The next morning she has to leave work early due to a bloody nose. Then she realizes that she does indeed need to visit Mrs. Ganush and beg her to lift the curse. When she arrives at the Ganush family residence, she discovers that Mrs. Ganush has died and they are celebrating with an Irish wake, an old 19th century traditional party with the corpse laid out on a table. Christine trips and falls on the body, causing the table to break, and she ends up with Mrs. Ganush on top of her, pouring embalming fluid into Christine's mouth in another gross display. This especially will have many people gagging because it's so awesome, nasty and gross. That afternoon she returns to Ramjas to see if there is another way to get rid of the curse, since asking Mrs. Ganush for forgiveness is off the table. He tells her that the Lamia must have a sufficient sacrifice, an animal. She is totally against that. Until a couple of hours later, when she is terrified by another visit from the Lamia. Next we see her getting a butcher knife and calling for the cat, which she sacrifices. That night she and Clay go to his parents' house for dinner as a meet the folks overture. His mother has always thought that Christine is beneath her son and he can do far better, but in a moment of honesty his mom connects with Christine over the commonality that they both had alcoholic parents. This hallmark moment doesn't last long though, as the Lamia toys with Christine, causing her to act insane and prompting a swift and thoroughly embarrassed exit for Clay and Chris. She returns to Ramjas. The sacrifice obviously was a failure and she rages at him, demanding he find a solution immediately. He recommends that she petition the Lamia directly. He refers to the brewer and tells her it's going to cost $10,000 US. She feverishly searches for anything of value in her possession and takes it in a trunk to a pawnbroker. He pays her $3,000. She is distraught but takes the money out of desperation. Clay tells her that he paid Ramjas the $10,000. Next we see her approaching the house of the Bruja. Ramjas introduces her to Christine. She tells them that the property is on a particular spot in which a convergence of The Bruja tells Christine that her plan is to allow the Lamia to possess her and then have Christine place her hand on the goat so she can force the Lamia into the goat, and Milos will kill the Lamia using the machete on the table. We also see some freaky, scary, restless spirits before the Lamia makes the scene in a classic, unmistakably Raimi style. Chaos ensues as the Lamia possesses the Bruja and taunts Chris and tells her that it will relish ripping her soul to pieces at the right time. Christina places her hand on the goat and the Bruja tells Milos to kill the goat. The Lamia tricks Milos into cutting the goat loose and possesses Milos through biting him. The Bruja casts the Lamia out of Milos and the ceremony kills her. Afterward, Christina is grateful that the Lamia is vanquished. Ram James says, "No. No. The Lamia is still coming for her the next day unless she can pass the curse to another person." Chris asks why this option was never offered before. Ramjas tells her that to do that is a very evil thing, and that his assistance in the evil deed is as karmically damning to him as it is to her. He places the cursed button in an envelope and wishes her luck. She tries, but when it comes down to it she just can't curse anyone else because of her good nature. She can't even give it to Stu the jerk from work. Is Chris doomed to be sucked into the flames and torment of hell? Into the shredding claws of the evil Lamia for all eternity? Will she escape this horrid curse? Rent or buy this awesome movie and find out. I don't usually recommend buying films, but in this case I am making an exception. On a scale of 10 I give it a solid 9.1. Every laugh and jump is a delight from beginning to end. This is IRATE Prostate and I'm out. Daterludes.